In this presentation, we will examine the history of immigration in the United States, taking place mainly in the 1800s. So open to your notes section, take good notes, and make sure and jot down any questions you might have, and see me for clarification. So here we have a map of the world. Here, of course, is the United States, and what we're discussing are reasons why people might come to the United States from other countries to live. That's called immigration. So the root word of immigration is migration. And migration is the act or process of people moving from one place to another with the intent of establishing residency. And that's important. It's not just going somewhere to vacation. It's not going somewhere just to visit, even for an extended period of time. It's moving somewhere with the intent of living there. And there are two forms of migration. Immigration, which of course we know is when people come to the United States, but there's also emigration. And an emigrant is someone leaving a certain place. So if you are emigrating from, say, Ireland and immigrating to the United States, that means you're leaving Ireland and coming to the United States. Immigration. Immigration is to enter and settle in a country or region to which one is not native. They weren't born there. An immigrant is a non-native born resident of a country. And we've been discussing push and pull factors. They were also apparent during westward expansion. There were reasons that people were leaving the east to go west, and there were good things happening in the west that pulled people from the east. Well, now we're talking about global push and pull factors, reasons for people to leave their nation and come to the United States. So I hope you're familiar with push and pull factors. We're going to be going over them presently. So push factors are negative reasons for leaving someplace, such as war or not enough land in the home country. Political persecution. This would be when a person disagrees with the government and they make it known that they disagree and they're treated unfairly and poorly because of that. Religious persecution. This is when someone has a certain religious belief, and because of that belief, the society in that country treats them unfairly or poorly, persecutes them. Maybe there's a revolution going on in that country pushing someone to leave. Poverty, of course, is one of the prime reasons that people leave a certain country to go move somewhere else. And disaster. Maybe there's an earthquake or a flood or a volcano, some terrible natural disaster pushing someone to leave where they live. And then there are the positive pull factors, such as economic opportunity. Maybe someone can't find any work where they live, so they come to the United States because they have an opportunity to get a job. There's more land available in the United States. Promise of political freedom. So, in other words, frequently people come to the United States because they have the freedom to say what they want to say. And if they disagree with the government in the United States, they're free to say it and they won't be thrown in jail or treated unfairly. Promise of religious freedom. People come to the United States to worship the way they want to in peace. Just kind of a general hope for a new life, a fresh start in the United States. In fact, in the 1800s, there were many people that lived in other countries that heard stories that in the United States the streets were paved with gold. All you had to do was come to the United States and you would see gold laying there right in the streets. And this was kind of what they imagined life in the United States would be like. And of course, we know that when they got here, that wasn't exactly correct. Some statistics. In 1820, less than 1 out of every 10 Americans lived in cities. Today, approximately 80% of Americans live in urban areas. The progression from rural living to urban living began in the period from 1830 to 1860. And we can see that in the year 1800, yes, there were 10 million people that lived in the country on farms, and only 5 million lived in cities. But over the next 40 years, this 10 million turns into almost 40 million, so multiply times 4. But this 5 million is going to turn into 25 million in cities. So 5 times as many people lived in cities in just over the span of 40 years. And many of the people that lived in cities were immigrants. This graphic shows the same kind of progression in the growth of cities. And we know some reasons why people move to the cities, but another reason is because they immigrated there from other countries. So, some more statistics. Between 1865 and 1890, 10 million immigrants came to the United States. Most of them were from Northern Europe. From Germany, 2.8 million people immigrated. From Great Britain, there were 1.8 million immigrants. From Ireland, 1.4 million immigrants, mainly due to a potato famine. And then a little bit later, during the 1890s, many immigrants came from southern and eastern countries in Europe. 10 million Italians, Greeks, Slavs, Russian Jews, and Armenians. Slavs are people that are from what's called Slavic countries, and those are countries in Europe that are basically located in the southern and eastern parts of Europe. From Italy alone, 3.8 million, that's almost 4 million immigrants coming from Italy, and then another 3 million from Russia. And there is a large population of Italian Americans and Russian Americans in the United States even today. 70% of immigrants came through New York City. And this, of course, we know is Ellis Island. It's a nice aerial photograph of Ellis Island, and you can see it's not very far at all from the state of New York. And immigrants would get off of the ships here, and they would be processed in these buildings. They would give their name and they would have their health checked. And when they were approved, they would go on and become American citizens. There were also Asian immigrants, and they mostly entered through California ports, such as San Francisco. And they were mostly Japanese and or Chinese. There are many Asian countries, but most of the immigrants to come to the United States from Asia were Japanese or Chinese. And their immigration numbers were restricted. Only a certain amount of Asian immigrants were allowed. And these Asian immigrants often accepted very low wages, which led to competition with Americans for jobs. And there was a lot of racism towards these Asian immigrants. The people that already lived in the United States considered Asians to be inferior, based solely upon their race, which of course is what racism is. Japanese immigration, many came by way of Hawaii and settled in the Los Angeles area. Many Japanese worked for private businesses, and this did not provide competition for Americans, unlike the Chinese. Of course, there's Mexican immigration. Mexico is connected to the United States directly in the south, so it was a little bit easier for Mexicans to immigrate both legally and illegally to the United States, because all they had to do was walk here, basically, cross a river, and if they could make it here, then they'd be in the United States. Mexicans would pour into the sparsely populated southwestern states like Arizona and New Mexico, even Texas. And even today, labor shortages still draw Mexicans in. There are more Spanish speaking people in Los Angeles than any other place in North America other than Mexico. Now, politics also plays a huge role in immigration, especially today. The two parties, Republicans and Democrats, really cannot agree on immigration policy. And this has been going on since the 1800s. The Know Nothing Party was the group of citizens that believed immigration should be severely restricted. They believed that immigrants would end up coming to this country and dissolving American culture. They believed that if enough foreigners were let into the United States, that there would be no American culture left, which is really kind of ironic since the original settlers in the United States were immigrants from Europe. Of course, the Native Americans are the only group that are absolutely indigenous to the United States. They were born here originally, have been here for thousands of years. Everyone else is an immigrant. And the immigration issue today is very hotly debated. On one side, we can see this graphic shows how many are here illegally. Unauthorized immigrants make up 28% of the country's foreign-born population and 3.7% of the overall population. And you can see this graph shows immigrants into the United States and how it's grown over just the last 30 or so years. So there are reasons that people believe that illegal immigration and immigration in general is potentially a threatening thing. However, on the other side, written right on the Statue of Liberty, the symbol of freedom, it says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." So a symbol of the United States is saying immigrants come to the United States. And that's what this country was founded on, immigrants. We are a melting pot, a salad bowl. So you really should think about, kind of where do you fall in this argument? And maybe you fall kind of in the middle and decide which way you lean. It's a very, very complicated issue. So hopefully it's something that you'll think about in the future, and eventually you may have to even vote on this issue. So, as usual, please see me with any questions, and I will clarify anything that you don't understand.